Hello. Good evening, everybody. About 14 or 15 minutes behind, but we're live on Facebook now, so we're good there. And it allowed a little bit more time for everybody to come in. So we're going to go ahead and get started. We want to respect everybody's time tonight, including our amazing guest speakers. So for those of you who have just come in, we have registration cards. If you can fill those out, please, so we can collect your info. If you're participating online, you can go to mercygateministries.com and submit your email there to stay connected with email newsletters, updates, and future events as well. I do just want to briefly share that I know that there's youth in the room tonight and watching online. So there is a graphic warning. Human trafficking, child sex trafficking is not something that can be taken lightly. We use all the hard words. And that's what a teacher had told us. We asked her if we should, monitor what we're saying. She said, no, they're hearing it anyway, so let's talk about it. So we just want to educate families and individuals who are tuning in tonight. On our agenda, we have a survivor testimony with Carla Solomon, Human Trafficking 101 with Chuck Paul, community collaborations with Brent Ives, and then local investigations by investigator Greg Longenbaugh. If time allows, which right now we are kind of pushing it on time till 7:30, but we would like to open it up for a panel question and answer. We're hoping that we answer all your questions that you came in with tonight with our presentation. So what we're going to do now is play a video of just Mercygate and what we are all about. So it gives you an overview of just kind of introduction there, so we don't have to talk about all of the programs and all of the amazing things that we do. And so we'll go ahead and play the video. I'll come back up and introduce our guest speakers. Maybe we'll get back to the video. So thank you for all of you for being here tonight and those participating online. Thank you to Cross Kingdom for always allowing us to come and use this space for the community. And Pastor Justin Carpenter for always being voluntold to help with media. If it wasn't for him, we wouldn't have the lights and the air and all the things, probably even access to here. My name is Aubrey Reed. I'm the project manager for Mercy Gate Ministries. I'm also an advocate for the ARC program through Mercy Gate. We have two programs, residential and non-residential, which is the Magdalene House and the Advocacy Resource Center. I have the honor tonight to share the stage and to introduce our guest speakers this evening. First, we have Carla. Carla works as the outreach specialist for Mercy Gate Ministries and advocate supervisor for ARC. She is a member of the Human Trafficking Survivor Leadership Council for the state of Texas Governor's Office. Carla also holds many other titles. One was a survivor, but now she's a champion. She has lived experience with child sex trafficking as well as adult exploitation. Carla's efforts today in the fight against trafficking has reached thousands and have even extended beyond our country. In Ireland, to be specific, she stands for freedom, for restoration, and for justice, and she shares her testimony and expertise to educate, empower, and to be a voice for the voiceless. So we got the video, and then she'll come up.
You want me to start from the complete beginning? She started taking me to drug dealers' houses and having me sleep with the drug dealers in exchange for drugs. I lived on the streets from the time that I was 11 until I was 14, exchanging the use of my body for basic needs. I built a relationship with a man who I thought was my Prince Charming. I soon found out that it was all a big manipulation. My Prince Charming turned into a monster. I tried to run away in Houston, but I didn't get very far. He told me that if I didn't come back, he was going to take my 5-year-old daughter and do the same thing to her. I find this cross. I remember holding it and shedding one quiet tear because I didn't want him to hear me. And I remember looking up at the ceiling, and all I said was, I can't take this anymore. 3 days later, I was recovered by law enforcement, walking out of this hotel, and I broke, and I fell to the ground, and I cried, and I told the cops that they just saved my life. But that was just the beginning of the hardest part. The healing journey afterwards was harder than just surviving.
I remember being in my kitchen and knowing that something was wrong. She told me she had taken a bottle of pills and that she wanted to die. I knew the Lord was saying that she needs help, and I want you to help her.
I tell a lot of people that was the day that I tried to throw in the towel, and God threw it back in my face and said, no, you got work to do.
Meeting and loving Carla compelled us to dive deep into this dark world of trafficking and sexual exploitation. We knew we needed to step into this space and fill the gaps of services for these women. This is where we needed to put our focus.
Today, I serve as the survivor advocate for Mercy Gate Ministries. I am the advocate supervisor for Advocacy Resource Center. I work full-time in this field because I know what it feels like to be in those dark places. And I can't explain how amazing it feels to finally find that group of people that you can really depend on as family. Mercy Gate gives me that.
At Mercy Gate Ministries, we believe that in order to fight human trafficking, sexual exploitation, and sexual trauma, we need to do it in 4 ways: prevent, rescue, restore, and advocate. Prevention is key to fighting this battle, and we do it through community awareness, training with law enforcement, churches, schools, and many other groups. Through these events, we are hoping to equip thousands of people all across Texas.
The second thing that we do is help rescue the individuals and act as a second responder for those who have been identified as victims.
After a victim has been rescued, we then walk through the restoration process with the women. We do that in a number of ways, but one way is through our Magdalene House program.
Magdalene House is our 12-month program where the women can live in a safe, loving home environment where they can come and heal. We have life skills classes, counseling, equine therapy, and art therapy. It's a place where they are loved and cared for while we help them restore their lives and heal from their trauma.
We are also advocates for these women, not only in our residential program, but also for those who are not in need of the Magdalene House through the ARC program. We partner with the court systems to seek justice for them and make sure these women get everything they need to heal and have a restored life.
Our goal is to prevent this tragedy from happening, rescue those who are victims, restore lives, and build a restoration ranch for those who have been victimized and advocate for justice. This task may seem daunting, but you can make a difference. Here's how you can help. You can donate your time, energy, or resources. You can join our prayer team. Join us, and together we can help end modern-day slavery.
Good evening, everyone. Thank you all for joining us tonight. My name is Carla Solomon, and we have a great deal of information to share with you guys. I'll be sharing a bit of my own personal testimony of surviving child sex trafficking and adult exploitation. I'm glad that Aubrey went over the graphic warning, but I don't go into any kind of gruesome details or anything like that. But if you do feel led at some point to excuse yourself, that is perfectly okay. So I'll just get started. At a young age, I was taken from my mom by my grandparents. My real dad has not been in the picture since I was a baby. My grandparents found out that I was not being properly cared for, and I was eventually taken away, and one of my aunts received legal guardianship of me. So I lived with her from the time that I was 4 years old until I was 11. Life was good. I had structure that every child needs. I was very well cared for. But whenever I got a little bit older, I started asking questions of why my mom didn't love me enough to make that phone call and talk to me. So the answers that I received from my aunt were nothing short of, she doesn't love you, she loves men and drugs more than she loves you. So she made me feel like a burden to her. She made me feel like if my mom would just get her stuff together, then she wouldn't have to provide for me or spend money on me. And if you care for a child that is not yours, please don't condemn them or place blame on them for what the parent can't do. So I started acting out, and I eventually was abandoned once again. My aunt got tired of my stuff, and she dropped me off at my mom's doorstep with nothing but a backpack full of clothes. She told me she wanted me to see what it felt like to live poor. I was only 11. Inside the home, my mom and new stepdad were doing drugs and being very violent with each other. This was behavior that I had never seen, and it scared me. So I ended up running away for the first time. An older lady approached me within hours of leaving. She actually knew my mom, and she lived down the street from us. She built a relationship with me to the point that I even called her mom. She made me sandwiches after school, and I really thought that she cared about me. She slowly introduced me to older boys and drugs, and eventually I was raped at a party that she took me to. After the incident at the party, life and everything around me spiraled out of control. She would sell me to her drug dealers or men that were searching to fulfill their disturbing fantasies. She would often send guys to my school so they could pick me up from school and take me home with them. At first, I continued to go to school, but I started getting made fun of because of my peers. They would see me being picked up by different men every day, and I thought what was going on was normal. I was in 6th grade. It was an adult that was telling me to do these things, and I thought that this person genuinely cared about me. I would even brag about what I was doing to other students at school because that was all I knew. People at school started calling me names. I was the outcast all of a sudden, the one that had no friends. So this woman, she would use the money that she made for her personal drug use. She then made me try it, the very same drug that I was trying to run away from home from. Eventually, I stopped going to school, but it seemed like nobody even noticed. I was finally able to get away from her whenever her 18-year-old daughter had intervened and shared with me the disturbing truth of her mother selling her since she was a little girl. But I escaped her to live on the streets and trade the use of my body for food and shelter. I wasn't allowed to go back to my mom's, so I lived on the street. This went on from the time I was 12 until I was 14. At 14, I ended up pregnant. I actually lied to an older man to have what I thought would be a safe place to stay during my pregnancy. At the time, I didn't see the issue, but this was a 27-year-old man with a 14-year-old girl. That is not normal. That is disturbing. He became very violent with me whenever he realized that my son was not his child. But I had nowhere else to go. I knew I had to leave, but I ended up enduring this for 5 years. When my son was 4 years old, I actually met my husband in the ugly process of leaving the situation with this older man. My husband was and always has been my knight in shining armor. We got married after 5 years and had 2 more children together. You would think this would be the happily ever after, but I never dealt with any of the trauma from my childhood. I never knew the effects that it had on me over all of the years, and I had lived with it for so long that I thought it was normal. So I was 29 years old, a general manager for a restaurant. I was going to college full-time. I had a teenager, a toddler, and an infant in the house, and feeling overwhelmed is probably an understatement. But I did the one thing that I knew how to do very well, and I ran. Yes, I was selfish. I ran from my husband, and I left my kids, and I totally isolated myself from everyone. I got into some really crazy situations. And during this chaos and separation from my family, I met someone who I thought was Mr. Prince Charming. He sold me a false dream. He spent lots of money on me to pamper me. He bought me things I could never afford otherwise. He took me to places that I had always wanted to go, like the aquarium. And it wasn't just material things. He listened to me. He wanted to know everything about me, everything that I liked, that I disliked, my hopes, my dreams, what made me, well, me. He was creating a relationship with an intent to use any vulnerable area he could find against me. But little did I know, he already knew exactly who I was married to, how many kids we had, everything. But I didn't even know this man's real name. Honestly, maybe in the moment, I didn't care. Or maybe I didn't notice because of all the attention he gave me and all the money he spent on me, the places he took me and how he would treat me. It blinded me to the truth of what was happening. And I never thought any of this. And I never had any idea. I was never taught any of this as a kid. And I remember even thinking, this is too good to be true. And my gut feeling was right. One day, my Prince Charming turned into a monster. He introduced me to his world. He took me to a spot in Baton Rouge that was known for prostitution and drugs. He picked up a young girl, maybe 16, 17 years old, and instantly he changed when she got into the car. He was a totally different person, very demanding and harsh, not soft-spoken and sweet like he had been in the past few weeks. I was scared to help her, but after about a week of constantly driving them around, she got beat up really badly one night because she got back in the car and didn't have his money. All I could do was watch. I was terrified. And all of a sudden, everything changed. From that night on, he never let me out of his sight. He placed an ad on Backpage.com, which is an online site that has been shut down by FBI for soliciting sex online. He named me Alexia, the Australian princess, on the ad. He used a blurred-out face picture of a girl from a porn site. He then told me that I needed to dye my hair blonde. He even started calling me Alexia instead of my real name. I tried to leave, but he stopped me and convinced me that he just needed me to do it one time. When I got back in the car after the first time, he gave me a quota of $1,500 a day. If I didn't meet that quota, there was punishment. He introduced me to methamphetamine. He traveled me across states. From Louisiana, he brought me to Texas. He broke my ribs in College Station because I shut a door. He then took me to Colorado and stopped at every city in between. He refused to take me to the hospital for my ribs, and I could actually feel the broken bones in my chest. I got the guts and ran when we got back to Houston, but it didn't get very far. I called my husband, and while I was telling him what was going on, I actually got a message from the guy telling me that if I didn't go back, he was going to take my 5-year-old daughter and do the same thing to her. He even sent the location of where she got on and off the school bus. So I screenshot all these messages and I sent them to my husband. I told him goodbye and that I was going back to protect our daughter. I didn't know, but my husband contacted police. But when I went back, things got way worse. In a College Station hotel bathtub, I weighed not even 100 pounds. I was in so much pain, and I was sitting in scalding hot water in the bathtub. I was fumbling through my purse. He already took everything of value from me, including my wedding ring, but I found this same cross pendant that you see in the video, and I never take it off. I had bought it for my husband years before for our anniversary. It has the Lord's Prayer etched into it. I looked up at the ceiling, and I shed that quiet tear and said, I can't take this anymore. I was recovered by law enforcement 3 days later, walking out of this hotel. They were actually screaming my name down the hallway, and it didn't even register in my head that they were talking to me. It took an officer getting right in front of my face and asking me, are you Carla Solomon, for me to realize that I'm not Alexia. I remember telling the police that day that they saved my life. They actually had some ladies from DPS take me to the hospital, and they sat with me through all of my exams and x-rays. My healing journey afterwards to me was actually harder than surviving actually what I went through. I experienced trauma bond or Stockholm syndrome, which was very disturbing mentally and emotionally. I went home and I hid in my house. Words cannot describe the terror that I felt. He had bonded out of jail and was on the run by this time and facing charges for human trafficking. He actually made the top 10 Texas Most Wanted list, and guys, this is where an advocate stepped into my life. Things got kind of ugly before they got better. I couldn't handle the memories that tormented me constantly, and I thought my only way out was suicide. So I took a whole bottle of my anxiety meds. This advocate, Che, she called me right in the middle of everything and just to check on me. And I actually broke down and I told her everything that happened, everything that was going on. She prayed with me, and I rededicated my life to God that day. And that's the day that in October 2017 that I tried to throw in the towel, and God threw it in my face and said, no, girl, you got work to do. So the next day I left the house. I got a job. My advocate helped me in so many different ways. She held me accountable. She was there to walk with me through all of the hard stuff. She taught me how to love myself, and she led me to the cross where I found true freedom. She wasn't just an advocate. She became a lifelong friend that I know without a doubt I can count on even today. Now we work together every day, helping others. We at Mercy Gate give that same type of relationship to all of those in our care, to those who truly need someone who understands where they've been and what they're going through. When I was a runaway on the streets, I think back to the many nights that I had nowhere to go, nobody that cared, and nothing but a backpack full of dirty clothes. We have services here in our community for kids and adults that have walked these same dark paths that I've been on alone. This is also why I believe organizations like Mercy Gate, Hill Country Crisis, Roy Moss Youth Alternative, and even law enforcement, as well as many other entities, play a very important role in this fight, because not only do they advocate for survivors, but they train and educate the community on the realities of what trafficking is, what it looks like, and what to do about it, like we are here tonight. So today, my oldest son is a full-time student at LSU. He is double majoring in physics. My mom and I have an amazing relationship, even after all the craziness. She and my stepdad are now sober and great grandparents to my children. My trafficker, whose real name is Herman Fox, was finally recovered in Kentucky in 2018 and charged in Brazos County, Texas. And in 2019, he took a plea offer for 30 years for charges related to human trafficking. So after all this, and I actually learned what human trafficking really was, it was then that I was able to make the realization that what happened to me was not my fault. All the dots connected for me, and I was able to understand for the first time in my life what I had actually went through. I do not believe for 1 second that anyone is out there by choice. Most feel like that's all they're worth and that they don't deserve any better. Sometimes that's because that's what they're told to believe, or they have suffered trauma and don't know that there's a way out. Escaping is oftentimes impossible for so many different reasons. My daughter was threatened, so if that meant that I had to smile and tell people that I was out there for my own choice, then I did that, because in that moment, shaming myself was way better than facing the punishment that me or my daughter could have fell victim to. Some misconceptions are that it doesn't happen here, or not in this country, or that trafficking looks like the movie Taken, or even the white van at Walmart. And it's so far from reality, you guys. I hope you learned that here tonight. There's also the myth that people believe it's not in my backyard. Let me be the first to tell you guys, it's all right here, right under our noses. It might look a little bit different, but it is here. And most of the time, the person doing the exploitation is somebody very close, someone we love, and someone that that even makes it harder for us to accept or believe. So somebody told me something in the hospital, and I never forgot it. She said, "Carla, do you know that you have survived out of something that only 1% make it out of?" So I stand here representing that 1%, to have a voice for the voiceless, to stand against the injustice that affects so many. My prayers are that others are set free, the demand is disrupted, and we can abolish modern-day slavery together by our efforts in this fight. Thank you all again for joining us.
Thank you, Carla, for your courage to share your story with us and so many others, and all the time. You know, she gets so many requests to come and speak and train, and little by little she shares pieces of her story, and I'm always learning something new. So you definitely bring light into this dark topic of human trafficking, and it's a true joy to call you my friend and work alongside you every day. I'm going to introduce Chuck Paul. He is a consultant, trainer, speaker, and a former special investigator. He's also an advocate with over 10 years of federal service and 12 years of Texas state service. Chuck currently has the honor of serving as the Roy Moss Youth Alternatives Director of Outreach and Child Sex Trafficking Services. Chuck began his lifetime of service as a soldier in the United States Army and is a Gulf War combat veteran. Chuck's formal education includes a bachelor's degree in criminal justice from UTSA with a minor in youth and human services nonprofit management. Chuck is dedicated to increasing public awareness and assisting nonprofits and also governmental organizations that are beginning to prioritize their time and their resources to address this rapidly growing issue of modern-day slavery. Welcome, Chuck.
And I'm lucky enough to be a friend of Carla's, so, I mean, that's the best part right there, right? We've done lots of talks together. She's fantastic. She's awesome. So you already know who I am, and I'm going to talk to you a little bit about trafficking. Now, as we've already warned, I'm going to use terms in this that you actually hear in trafficking. So when you hear these terms, they are very unique to this subculture, so you know that something's going on with that. All right, so first talk about what the problem exists. The Roy Moss Youth Alternatives started back in 1976, back when they were just recognizing that, you know, there were homeless kids in the streets, runaways, kids been thrown out of the house. Actually, this has been an ongoing issue. Trafficking's not a new crime. It's been going on, it's even in the Bible. It's modern-day slavery, right? But we know that year after year, over 400,000 kids go missing all around the United States. Now, these are kids. These are 18, and these are under 18. This is someone's baby, someone's child, right? We know through the Department of Housing and Urban Development that there's about 2.8 million homeless kids in the United States. Some of them are with family, some of them are not with their family. The average age is 15. So at 15 years old, they can't rent a car, they can't get an apartment, they can't, you know, get any of the things they would basically need to survive, so they have to be dependent on someone. And unfortunately, we have so many of these youth run into someone that's going to exploit them, have them engage in labor or sex trafficking in order to survive. So we already talked about trafficking, buying, selling, trading of a person. It's a third-party gain, and there is no commercial gain for the person that's happening to. This is modern-day slavery. And when I keep saying the word slavery, I get some folks go like, really? Is that kind of... No, like there's more slaves in the world today than there were prior to the 13th Amendment. $150 billion a year national business. This is huge, right? People being sold. They don't get to say who they work for, where they eat, where they sleep. They don't get to say who they have sex with. They get branded with the market of ownership by the trafficker. And when I say some of these terms that they use to describe the victims, to describe groups of victims, it's terms that we normally refer to livestock. All right, so, well, that came out weird. So who is at risk? Basically, you've got young persons, they have history of running away, history of family violence. So if there's a history of family violence, what are they running away from? What are they running to, right? If they have a history of substance abuse in the family, all right? Now law enforcement's been coming over. Their reactions with law enforcement are always negative because they keep having, friends, relatives go to jail, right? If they get molested, they've learned that sex is now a commodity because when they got molested, they got a reward for it, right? So that's commercializing sex. And if you're 15, you're on the streets, or you're a child, sometimes sex is all you have to survive. So what do they target? They target group homes, shelters, they target homeless youth, right? They're looking for the kid that needs someone to love them. That's what they want. They want the young person needs someone to love them. Now, there's young men in the audience. I'm going to tell you, young men, last year, 40% of our identified victims were males. All right, where do we find our kids? We find them as runaways. We find them car hopping. Car hopping is when they go to the malls and they pop the door and they see what they can find in 10 seconds, and then they go and sell that stuff to survive, right? We find them in menial jobs. We find them hustling. We find them being couch hoppers, right? Couch hoppers is the kid that, they're always staying at one friend's or another house. They really don't have a home. What are they running from? Where are they coming from, the juvenile justice system, or are they engaging in survival sex? Survival sex is all they have sometimes. All right, trafficking versus prostitution. First off, I have literally talked to hundreds and hundreds of former sex workers. I have yet to meet a prostitute. I've met persons who have been prostituted. I've met persons who have been held in prostitution, but I've yet to meet a true person that said, yeah, no, when I was 5, I dreamed of being a stripper and a prostitute. No, that's not what they dreamed of, right? So if you got a person that's being held through psychological manipulation or force, or they're being forced through force manipulation, their family's being threatened, they're being blackmailed, they're being coerced, right? Then they're a victim of trafficking. And I've talked to so many survivors, and they're talking to me. These are kids when they're first coming out of it. This was all they had. This person they believed that did this to them, they believed they loved them. They believed they cared about them. This has its own subculture, which they call the life. They refer to this as the life, right? The individuals that are traffickers, they don't call themselves pimps. They don't call themselves traffickers. They call themselves players. Players go to play, right? We've all heard the term player. We don't know what we're actually saying when we're saying that. It's slave master, right? Each one of these players, they call this the game. So it's just like video games because they're trying to soften it up. They're trying to desensitize us to it. I'm a player and I'm in the game, right? Got to do it. Very few independents out there, right? If you're a renegade, you're on the streets, that means you're a kid or somebody that's out there and you're engaging in survival sex, you're automatically a target for everybody that's out there. So you got to have a player, you got to have a bottom to protect you. And in certain areas, like big cities, you also have to pay street tax to the gang that controls that particular area. So as you move from place to place, that player's got to pay street tax. If they don't pay street tax, they're coming after them. And the first thing they're going to target is their victims. They're going to go after their victims first. Each player has a bottom. That bottom is usually looked at as a co-conspirator, often prosecuted by law enforcement as a co-conspirator. But the bottom is truly the biggest victim. The bottom is usually that boy or girl that's been with them the longest, and they're being told, hey, if you set up the dates, you teach them how to collect the money, you set up the ads, you do all of those things, right? And they all get their automatic every day. That means they get their daily quota, right? Then you don't have to do it. But if they don't, then you got to do it. And we all think, well, they're throwing their friends under the bus, but this is survival. I had one little girl flat out tell me it was either me or them, and it wasn't going to be me anymore. Plain and simple, right? So, I hear lots of crazy numbers thrown out there. My average victims tell me that they've had to service about 5 to 7 individuals per day. There's different types of sex acts that go for different prices. There's different descriptions of sex acts, right? There's one called the porn star experience. That's sex with a condom, right? 1 hour. Then there's the girlfriend experience, which could be anything the buyer wants, and it's usually going to be something gross and disgusting that's come straight from porn, something the buyer would never ask someone they love to do. And it's going to be violent. And that can go for a few hundred to a few thousand. So these kids have this daily quota. It's called their automatic, right? They have to make the automatic and turn it over to the bottom every single day. When they don't, they're called being out of pocket. If you're out of pocket, that means that you're not turning over your automatic. So now you're going to have to take your licks. Your licks may be a beating, or it may be a super kinky date that you have to go on where you can guarantee some horrible things are going to happen to you, right? Well, the way to avoid taking their licks is if you bring someone into the family, and that's the term they use. That means recruiting your friend or somebody like that. So if it's going to be you or somebody else, what would you have it rather be? This grooming process, they first start out by actively listening to them. This is a psychological practice, right? They listen to them. They listen, they don't say anything unless they're asked. They don't give their opinion unless they're asked. They work with them, they capture their attention. They start treating them well. They find out what their love languages is. Do they like gifts? Do they like words of affirmation? Do they like time and attention, right? Do they like touch? Whatever they find, they're going to use that to continue to drill down to that child but how they give and receive love. Then they're going to lie to them. They're going to tell them stories. And in particular, they're going to utilize whatever the person said, the intended victim said, in order to build a trauma bond. And because nothing bonds better than trauma. When we have what we call perceived shared trauma, it bonds people, right? So they would say something like, if they heard the youth talking about they're worried their parents are going to split up, they would say, you know, I've never shared this with anybody. I don't know why I'm sharing this with you, because I guess you're just so mature. But man, my dad left my mom when I was younger, and it really messed me up. That's baloney, but that's the kind of stuff they'll use in order to have that bond create. Signs of grooming, they got new stuff that you know you didn't get for them, right? Or you got a kid that you know can't afford it, or their family can't afford it, they suddenly have new things, right? They have a drastic change in behavior that is totally unexplained, especially for people that they're normally be around. This kid may have been engaged in sports. Now they're not interested. They may have been in band. They're not interested, right? They have different friends that seem to be kind of controlling, and they're disconnected and isolated. This is a real ad. This is a real ad that was sent out. So they believed they were sending it to a teenager when actually they were sending it to law enforcement. And that particular ad was sent out to somebody. They were saying, hey, you want a summertime job? They're offering $2,600 a week for her to make working as a part-time online model. This is the ways that they fish for young people, right? They'll put ads on walls. Those are real ads on walls. Final Four's in town. Hey, you can make a bunch of money. People just want to hang out with you, right? That Post-it offers $4,500 a month working part-time flexible hours, and they posted that on the gas station pump for the gas station directly in front of the CPS office, so where the foster kids run. Grab a Post-it. This type of face-to-face recruiting is called knocking. Knockers could be anyone, family friend. You got guys that go out there and date women that have kids in order to access the kids of the woman. You can have relatives. Unfortunately, we have found out that over 50% of the victims actually knew their trafficker before they were victimized by them. They had a relationship with them. There are kids recruiting kids. A lot of times these kids are doing that in order to avoid having to do this themselves because they've been caught up in this world. They have to meet that daily quota. So this will be the kid that in school that now becomes disengaged. For some reason, they tend to start hacking other people's cell phones. They're trying to avoid taking licks. This is a kid that has to have Snapchat on all the time and take a picture every 30 minutes to show their location, right? They'll avert their eyes. They don't want to talk to authority figures. They don't want to talk to teachers. This is a real thing. There are ads out there. There's stuff out there, Vanity Fair, Huffington Post, talking about a way to pay for college, a way to pay for things, sugar daddy, sugar baby, right? This is total baloney. This is involved. I actually have talked to several youth, high school kids, middle school kids, that honestly believe that adults will give them money and stuff just to hang out with them. That they're that interesting. Well, then I burst their bubble and say, you're not. I don't want to be around you. Not when you're doing your stuff. I mean, if you need help, I'm all here, but I don't want to hear you talk about the latest video game. I don't care, right? So, but they believe what this actually is a way to lure young people into trafficking, okay? So much of a problem started in 2018. ASU and several universities started putting out flyers to warn incoming freshmen, be careful. Bunny hunting is recruiting online. You can literally be anybody you want to be online, right? Anyone you want to be. But then what happens is when they create these identities, they could literally have multiple people they're talking to at one time. This is going to be the person that if a young person has a bad day, they're talking to their friend online, and they're going to be like, yeah, you know why your mom's being so mean? Because you're prettier than her and she knows it. You know why your teacher's so mean? Because she knows you're going to get a better job than her. You know why your dad's not around? He's not working. He's probably off with somebody else, with his buddies, because he doesn't want to be around you. They're poisoning the well of relationships this child has, or woman, with anybody else. They want to separate them out. They want to isolate them. These are predators doing exactly what predators do in the wild. Separate out the one they perceive as weakest, give them a bunch of lies, and then manipulate them. So sexting, I put this in here because I've had so many youth that have been pulled into this world because they were afraid their parents were going to find out they sent naked pictures. Because a lot of people don't understand that data can't be deleted. You can't delete data. You have to overwrite it. So if you send a message to your best friend deletes it, you delete it, it still exists in 7 other places, because when you send a message, it goes out to 3 different cell towers out here, then it goes to a server farm, then it goes back over to 3 different cell towers, then to your friend's phone. But it happens that quick. So it's in 7 different spots. So that data you can't delete it. You have to overwrite data. That's the only way to delete data. So they say, oh, what about things like Snapchat and all that? Well, Snapchat, yeah, that goes away in a few seconds. No. Screenshot, you just catch it right there. Not only that, Snapchat has a sister site called Snapper Party. Don't go there. Unless you want a lot of malware, don't go there. But this is the one where the pictures are still viewable. #1 revenge porn site in the entire world. All right, so what do you do if you find this on somebody's device? First off, don't freak out and say, what were you thinking? Because guilt and shame has been used against this individual. That's how they're being chained. It's not an actual chain. It's guilt and shame, right? Same thing that Satan does. Darkness encapsulates them, right? This technique is old. So don't freak out. Take a deep breath. Get that on their level. Put the device in airplane mode. Call the police. Let the police image that device, and then get them counseling, because they've had a betrayal of trust. And nobody can defend against this if you get targeted. I'm going to say that. Even adult men. When I did some PI work, I did a couple of cases involving CEOs of companies that answered that Facebook Messenger. Hey! We all know, you look at that, go, who's this idiot, right? You don't answer it, right? But some people would answer it, oh, hey, Beck, hey, I'm really into older guys. Oh, cool. And that's where it starts, okay? People fall for this. These are predators. They're actual manipulators. So you have to understand, online safety and etiquette is important to teach our youth. That's why There's literally hours and hours and hours of free training for kids. Everything from clicking the robot for the itty bitties all the way to stuff that's like free form for the older kids, you know, all the drama for the middle school and high school kids. Videos, games, interactive stuff through the National Center for Missing and Exploited Children. I have a friend that does a show called Next Talk Radio that specifically teaches parents how to talk to kids about online safety and etiquette. And then I have a podcast that I do with 821 Freedom Chasers called Talk for Freedom. And Carla has been on there many times. It's absolutely free on Google, on iTunes. You can get it. You want to listen to it. But this is ways that we can share information. All right, so I'm going to get into the meat and potatoes of what grooming really is. There's an actual term for it. It was first coined by Sigmund Freud when he was doing studies of adult survivors of sexual abuse, called fractionization seduction. And it's actually a step-by-step process that can be taught. And that's the scary part. They call it the Black Rose sequence. They call it the system. They call it the Shogun method. They sell it under all types of different packages, right? So first, they have to create intrigue pings. Intrigue pings is flashy car, flashy jewelry, you know, money, right? Those types of things. Next thing they're going to do is they're going to build rapport using active listening. And what they're going to do is they're going to build that rapport. They're going to take as much time as it takes to build that rapport because they want to find out what your hopes and dreams are. They want to find out what makes you tick. And then they're going to offer that. They're going to dangle that in front of you like a carrot, but it's always unreachable because there's always caveats to it. They're also going to use those fake shared personal experiences in order to try to trauma bond, right? And once they get that in and they understand how you give and receive love, that's when the process is going to move on. This is what's called the Romeo phase. Romeo's the pretender and the promiser. He will pretend to be whatever you want him to be, and he will promise the world. But the problem is that he can't deliver because he doesn't have enough money. They're going to seduce the victim. They're going to seduce the victim into a sexual relationship, right, in order to further bond them to each other, right? Once they get that in there you have these promises, all rewards at that point become conditional. Everything becomes, you know, trade-offs. You scratch my back, I'll scratch yours. And then conditioning starts. Conditioning starts with the most powerful tool for reprogramming a human being called entice repel. If you don't believe me, how many married men are in this room? Gentlemen, this is for the married men. I have to ask you. You remember that really cool stuff you had before you were married? Where is that now? Yeah, all the ladies are laughing, right? Gentlemen, you are all victims of entice repel. Entice repel is a compliment followed by a correction. You look really good in that shirt, but wouldn't this one look better? I know I'm a victim of entice repel. I know every day because I know I'm sexy because my wife tells me every time I do the dishes, I'm sexy. Uh-oh, wait a minute, did I get the secret out? He's going, wait a minute. So, entice repel, but the way it works in trafficking world is like this. They're going to say things like, man, you know, you have the most beautiful hair and nails, but I got somebody that would really hook you up and really make it look good. You know, we're up in the club and you're dancing and you're looking at other people. It just hurts my heart, makes me think you don't want to be with me. You know, we're walking down the street. I want to show the world that I'm following you, so I'm going to step a little bit behind you. Hey, we're having sex, the best sex I've ever had. But, you know, I saw this stuff on porn. I'd really like you to watch porn with me. And, you know, maybe we can try some of that stuff. The reality is that all of those are ways to reprogram a person. Hair and nails, they're turning them into a product, right? They're changing their outward appearance. A lot of times they change hair color very quickly, all right? The dancing thing, they're watching for what's called the wandering eye, right? They don't want them making eye contact with other traffickers so that the trafficker doesn't take them away. They also don't want them making eye contact with other people because that brings attention to themselves, right? So that's what we'll have them looking at the ground all the time. The thing about following behind them in the streets, that's actually a nonverbal if you're on the track for that person's for sale. And the track is that particular area where they sell people on certain streets. And then the porn thing, that's to desensitize them, corrupt their morals, right? Make it seem like not such a bad thing, and also to practice the things they're going to be having to do when they're being sold. This is what's called daddy phase. Daddy's the provider of everything. He becomes the provider of everything at this point, he or she. They provide food, shelter, clothing. They provide the drugs. They want to get them hooked on the leash, which that's what the term they use for getting hooked on drugs, because it's another way to control them. And they become the sole protector, but there's always an underlying threat of violence. At this stage is when enslavement's going to occur. Enslavement's going to occur because the trafficker's going to create some type of huge trauma, right? Some type of huge drama, and they're going to say, like, I need to make a bunch of money really quick. I need to do it. My life is in danger. I owe people money. You know, maybe we should break up. You know, I know you changed everything about yourself. We should break up because you're not my ride or die. You're not keeping it 100. You know, you're not willing to do whatever it takes to save my life. And they're going to get the victim to be like, no, I'll do whatever. Maybe you can go on a date with one of my friends. Maybe he won't kill me. One date turns into 2 dates. 2 dates turns into 3 dates, right? Then the victim suddenly goes, hey, wait a minute. What's going on here? That's where the gorilla comes out. And that's when they say, hey, I don't want you doing this. I don't want you having sex with people. You chose to do this. You're the one who chose to do this. You picked this. Well, go ahead, tell the police what you're doing. You're going to go to jail. Go back and tell your mom and dad what you're doing, or your friends or your family. They're going to call you names. I'm the only one who loves you. And they're going to say that every single day. And that's where they're creating that trauma bond. Conditional, reward and punishment. This is a process that can be taught, right? And unfortunately, there's people out there that make money selling this process. We have to be aware of the schemes of darkness in order to fight against the schemes. The best way to protect against this is to have more positive relationships. Positive relationships means, you know, church, school, sports, friends, advocates. Positive relationships is what insulates you and your family from this type of manipulation. These victims become property that are bought and sold and traded between traffickers. These 3 pictures here are the same little girl. She's 14. She'd been trafficked since she was 11. She had 4 different traffickers. Their health is diminished, right? Obviously STDs, but of course they have injuries. Usually the injuries either came from the trafficker or them taking the licks, or the injuries come from the actual person that bought them because that's what they wanted to do to a person, right? They have, a lot of this is untreated, and then they have what's called compound post-traumatic stress disorder. Compound post-traumatic stress disorder, we see this in one other group. You know where that is? Combat veterans. Trauma, lull, trauma, lull, trauma, lull, with no time for recovery. With most folks with PTSD, they have a one-time traumatic incident, but they have something to base it off of. But if you, especially for folks that had a bad childhood, they didn't have that stability to base off of, so it makes it twice as hard for recovery. There are business fronts all throughout the community. There are ways to find out where this happens. You have what's called illicit massage parlors, also called happy ending massage parlors. They're all over the place, right? These are actually brothels. And then every single one of the strip clubs, they all have champagne rooms and VIP rooms where the actual sex happens. That's real ads. I blocked out the faces, right? Those are real ads. 3 different websites. There's multiple websites out there that sell sex. Now these sites have since been shut down, these particular sites here. But these sites here, you could actually put in exactly what you were looking for. This day, we were trying to show an example of a problem in a certain area, so we put in under 5'4", tiny, skinny, no hips, no tattoos, right, within that zip code. And we got like, one is 140 hits, 67 hits, and 14 hits on a Wednesday afternoon. What am I describing when we say that? A kid, right? Yeah. All right, so being trauma-informed means don't powering up on a survivor. It means getting down on their level, talking to them, like I'm uncomfortable being up here on the stage talking out here. You know, I'd rather be sitting next to somebody going, hey, what's going on? Tell me your story, right? This is what I feel better about. You have to understand, if you're working with survivors, they have to feel safe first. They're not going to say anything unless they feel safe, right? Make them feel safe, give them choices, allow them to become the person who they're supposed to be, because they're going to rediscover their sense of self on the other side of this trauma. They will never be the person they were before the trauma. That person's gone. Trauma changes everybody. I've had to tell a lot of parents that. They want their baby back. That baby is gone. Who this person is on the other side of that trauma is a combination of who they had to be to survive, because they learned life skills, and who they used to be, and who they can eventually become. Carla's a perfect example. This recovery process is long, it's hard, it can be hurt by people who they engage with, it can be helped. So, I'm going to end with this slide. I happen to be the Director of Outreach and CST Services for Roy Moss Youth Alternatives. We have a program called Safe Place, which you can bring here to Kerrville. Right now, you go to San Antonio, and we got 47 quick trips and about 13 YMCAs. We have 4 community centers, and then all the sheriff's department substations are all safe place sites. They got this yellow sign. Any young person, 24 and under, can walk in there and say, "Hey, I need help." They'll call us at 2 o'clock in the morning. Mr. Chuck's getting out of bed and going to get them. And I'm going to take them to our drop-in center. Our drop-in center is open 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. We get them in, we assess them. I walk in, it's great big butterfly, fluffy chairs, right? I'm constantly feeding them. You know, I make it as comfortable as possible. I've got diffusers, I've got giant bean bags that even my large person can be supported in, all right? Right? We make them feel comfortable. I get their physical needs first, make them feel comfortable, and now when the police come and interview them, they're going to interview them. They're going to interview them right there. So they're not sitting in a cold room and talking to them. This is a program you can bring here. You have organizations that bring Safe Place here. Right? You just got to have the people and the volunteers that are willing to get up at 2 o'clock in the morning, because it's always 2 o'clock in the morning. I don't know when it's not 2 o'clock in the morning. All right. Appreciate your time. Appreciate all the attention. And thank you, Carla, for allowing me to share.
Thank you, Chuck. And thank you for your service and always sharing your time with us. Chuck was the first person I met with, actually, when I started learning about child sex trafficking. We went and had coffee with him and Cece from A21, and just trying to learn what gaps of services and what is available, how can we help, and can we get involved in. A lot of things can happen in a year or two. So in a way, you've been a mentor to Carla and I both. Thank you. Brent Ives is who we have up next. Brent has been the executive director for Hill Country Crisis Council since April of 2017 and employed with the agency since August of 2010. Brent also serves on the board of directors for the Children's Advocacy Center of Texas. And prior to becoming the executive director, he spent almost 7 years as program director for the agency's Children's Advocacy Center called Kids Advocacy Place. That's where he managed day-to-day operations, completed forensic interviews of children, provided family advocacy and case management, and also served in the role of the multidisciplinary team coordinator for the 5-county service area. They just about do it all. So in addition to the children's advocacy services, the Crisis Council provides emergency shelter, legal advocacy, and other supportive services for family violence and sexual assault survivors for neighboring counties. So welcome, Brent.
Thank you, Aubrey, for that wonderful introduction. So I'm like, really? I'm going to follow Chuck Paul and Carla Solomon? Really, two of the most these two have, doctorates in advocacy and just being the knowledge base of what this is all about, this space of sexual exploitation of children. Thank you for that introduction. I think it's a bit confusing in the introduction, and I didn't mention Greg. Greg will be up here in a little bit, and if I had to follow him too, it'd be exactly the same. In the intro to what we're doing at Hill Country Crisis Council, it's a bit confusing. I heard 4 counties for the Family Violence Program and 5 counties for the Children's Advocacy Center. We are based here in Kerrville, and we provide services to Kerr County. We provide services to Gillespie County, Bandera County, Kendall County, and Kimball County, our neighbors down the interstate in Junction. Shout out to Junction. I want to also say that in the introduction, I was reading this the other day after I submitted it to Carla, and I noticed that I only highlighted the responsibilities that I had when I was a program director at the Children's Advocacy Center, not what I do as an executive director. And I think that that was a very intentional omission on my part, because I do understand, and I continue to understand, that the work that is done in child sex trafficking, commercially sexually exploited youth, that space is done at the ground level. It's done by the Chuck Pauls. It's done by the Carla Solomons. It's done by the Greg Longenbaughs, who will be up here shortly with law enforcement. It's done at the DFPS level. It's done at the CASA level. These are the individuals, and I'm obviously leaving people out. We have medical personnel that are on this team that we work with locally, and these are the folks that do the nuts and bolts of the work. They do the meat and potatoes. They do the meaningful work. And so, when the pandemic hit, and I know that nobody really wants to talk about the pandemic and what we've been through in the last 18 months, but when the pandemic came upon us, these are the folks that didn't shut down. They didn't stop doing what they were doing. They had to continue to grind it out and go out into the community and uncover stones and find children who are being abused and figure out how to problem solve these things. So you know what? I think it would be very appropriate for us to show some appreciation and a round of applause for these folks that are on the ground level doing this every day. Thank you. I also want to thank Mercy Gate Ministries for this opportunity to have this dialogue and this discussion here in this community. I appreciate you all showing up. I know there are folks on Facebook Live that are watching as well. And to have an opportunity to have this dialogue and to begin this discussion is something that is very important. I believe, and I'm not alone, data suggests this as well, that we are in an epidemic. We have a public health problem with child sexual abuse, with the commercial sexual exploitation of youth, with domestic minor sex trafficking. You're going to hear a lot of these different terms. They basically, the common denominator for what we're experiencing is the victimization of the children in these communities. And so, in my mind, this discussion is huge. Thank you for having the courage to show up tonight and making the time to come here and send the message that this is important. Could we go to the next slide? Oh. Yes, I do. So I mentioned that we actually in the introduction, and I haven't said anything about it, but our Children's Advocacy Center, Kids Advocacy Place, for purposes of this discussion, is the most important topic that I could cover, as well as with our care coordination team that I will also move into. But the Children's Advocacy Center plays a very important role in the process of children who have been sexually abused, who are commercially sexually exploited, and trafficked. And so I want to use a short video to illustrate what the Children's Advocacy Center does here in Kerrville, as well as across the state. Boy, I hope that pushed the right thing. Is this just a forward button? Getting smarter all the time. So this video is called Hear Me, See Me. It was a video that was produced and released by the Children's Advocacy Centers of Texas.
started when I was 5. My dad would wait until my mom and twin sisters were out of the house. It lasted for years.
My English teacher would send me texts and messages online. Then she started flirting with me and I didn't know what to think. She convinced me to go to her house.
My stepbrother used to take care of me because my mom works at night. Sometimes he did things that made me feel bad.
The day before my sisters turned 5, I told my Sunday school teacher what my dad did. I didn't want the same thing to happen to them.
My parents knew something was wrong, so I told them what happened.
In art class, I drew a picture of what made me sad. My teacher told me she knew people who could help me feel better.
It was really hard to talk about what happened. My teacher heard me and helped me. Do you hear me? Do you see me?
Do you hear me?
Do you see me?
Children and families impacted by abuse are not alone.
They are seen and heard by hundreds of local professionals
dedicated to protecting children across the state of Texas.
These professionals jointly investigate and prosecute child abuse cases while supporting these 60,000 children and their families with services and healing.
We are police officers,
counselors,
child protection professionals,
doctors, lawyers, and lawmakers.
And we support these brave children.
We're committed to addressing the complex issue of child abuse in Texas.
But we can't do it alone.
It takes all of us.
Join our collective effort to protect children in your community.
Will you listen? Really listen?
Will you see?
Really see?
So the staff that we have at our Children's Advocacy Center, Kids Advocacy Place, were a part of that group of first responders that didn't shut down during the pandemic. They continued to go to work and continue to serve the children that needed to be served at that time and since then. As I said, that video was a campaign that was launched by the Children's Advocacies of Texas, Children's Advocacy Centers of Texas in 2019, early 2019. And then later on in the year in 2019, there was a public awareness campaign called Can You See Me, which was launched by the Office of the Attorney General. You may have seen this campaign. It was a series of billboards that depicted various forms of slavery or human trafficking. And if you were in San Antonio or Austin or Dallas, some of the larger areas, you may have seen some of those billboards. There was also a campaign called One with Courage that was released by CAC Texas, Children's Advocacy Centers of Texas, and it was to bring awareness to child sexual abuse. I was doing some research and noticed that there's a public awareness campaign called Grace. That's an awareness program that is a collaboration between the Department of Family and Protective Services and the Governor's Office. And then there's the Blue Campaign, which is Homeland Security. These campaigns, the common thread, the intent and aim of these campaigns is obviously to activate the community, is to bring the community into a partnership with these other individuals that are doing this work on a daily basis that I've referred to, law enforcement, DFPS, our prosecutors, our CAC, CASA, those type of programs. And so when we as agencies say, hey, community, we really need your help, we need activation, we need to have this dialogue, we need to start this conversation, you're going to ask us, well, what can we do? Well, what you can do is learn the key indicators of these crimes, whether it be child sexual abuse, whether it be physical abuse, commercially sexually exploited youth, child sex trafficking. Learn the key indicators of what the crime is. raise awareness in the community. By virtue of you all coming out here tonight, you're interested, you're connected. You want to be a part of this movement. You want to be a part of this mission, and that's what we need. We need each of you to bring another 2 people to the next time that there's an awareness event, or we're doing something to bring, to shed light on this public health issue that we are experiencing. I have no doubt in that. And then reporting, I don't want to say, lastly, let's say reporting is such an important piece of this also, because we want justice to happen. We want healing to happen for those that are being victimized. So this is how you can be helpful to those agencies that are working these cases right now and continuing to figure out what we're doing locally. Chuck Paul comes from an area, San Antonio, that has a care coordination team that is specific to child sex trafficking. We do too. They've been doing it a lot longer than we have, and they have more cases, and they've hopefully of getting to a place to where they hopefully getting to a place to where they're figuring this out and they're working together. And so that's where we're hoping to be. Prevention efforts. So at the community level and at the local agency level, at the school level, at the state level, our prevention efforts have to take into consideration and have to surround the factors that make minors vulnerable to sexual exploitation. You heard Chuck talk about this. You heard Carla talk about this. This is not an exhaustive list. It's not an all-inclusive list. But those individuals that you saw on that video, that you watched their stories, they would be considered vulnerable to sexual exploitation. Not only because they have a history or experienced sexual abuse, but also because they experienced any kind of abuse. Child maltreatment is a factor that leads to vulnerability. Also, substance abuse, parental strain. If there's domestic violence or there are arrests that take place in a home, those are factors also. Let me move on to the care coordination team. See, I'm always thinking that something like this is going to happen, so I actually have a slide that you will not be able to see. But what I will talk about next is the Kerr County Care Coordination Team. Here locally, in your county, Aubrey's going to, I do this to Aubrey, but because of the vision of a Mercy Gate Ministries advocate making a call to the governor's office to find out, hey, how do we get some coordination in child sex trafficking in our county? And they answered, didn't they? They pretty much said, here's how we can help you do this and put this together. So we reached out to the partners that be, the Greg Longenbaughs, the law enforcement, the prosecutors in this county, Department of Family and Protective Services, CASA, the CAC, and we said, hey, here's what we'd like to do is to create a team and a coordination and a communication to be ready to respond whenever there is a youth identified in this county, and we want to be ready for it, and we want to be able to provide advocacy, and we want to be able to provide somebody who can go investigate that case and know exactly what they're looking for, and we want to have a DFPS worker that can go provide safety for this individual, and we want to have somebody with CASA who can be helpful. You might back up. If you'll back up, keep going, right there. This is your care coordination team in Kerr County. You've got your law enforcement. You've got the district attorney's offices, because like I said, we not only want to do investigations and we want to be helping with restoration, but we want justice. Not only us, but those that deserve justice. So we need the DAs on board with that. Common Thread is an advocacy group. CASA, the juvenile, these are the individuals that are going to be in the agencies that are going to be intersecting with these children who are high risk and vulnerable. And so we want to have a plan that when it happens, that we're ready to respond. And we've had a few cases that have surfaced that we're trying to, apply this team to. And if you'll move on, oh, I'm back in. I'm sorry. I guess I could have done that. We're at the place to where we are ready to launch our team. And what that means is that we've put together protocols and procedures and those type of things to make sure we're all protected so that we can go out with a collective vision and a collective mission to help recognize and to provide advocacy and to provide justice and healing or restoration for youth. Our mission is basically what I just said, to recognize, recover, protect, restore, and bring justice to commercially, sexually exploited, and at-risk youth through collaborative responses. I want to say thank you to all of you for the opportunity to be a part of this forum, in this space right now, in this discussion. And I want to say thank you to all the partners that continue to support us and the community. You all that showed up tonight, thank you very much.
Thank you so much, Brent, and all of the Crisis Council that serve in this region. Brent once told me jokingly, "Here comes Aubrey stirring things up." But it's because I know I can trust him, and I can go with him with the hard questions and all the solutions to change the world. He has the same heart and the same vision, and so he's an amazing community partner in what we do. We have our final speaker, investigator Greg Longenbaugh. He has been with the Kerr County Sheriff's Department since 2011 with a total of 18 years in law enforcement. He served as lieutenant for the Texas Department of Criminal Justice, training sergeant, patrol deputy, warrants deputy, criminal investigator, gang investigator, master jailer, and master peace officer. Greg has also served our country, the United States Army, from 1993 to 2003. He continues his education and training classes on sexual assault and human trafficking, including special investigator certifications for family violence, advanced human trafficking, and child sex trafficking and investigations. So welcome, Greg.
So everybody knows I hate that part when they're talking about me. Good evening. I won't be very long, but I do want to talk to y'all about a little bit of what's going on here in Kerr County, what we're trying to do to combat the sexual abuse of our children, the human trafficking, just anything of that nature. Y'all all know we have a new sheriff, and we've got a lot of good things going on that he is allowing us to do. One of those things is some covert operations. So while I will not go into the tactics of that and how exactly we do that, because it puts people in danger and it jeopardizes our... Closer? Okay. It jeopardizes our mission, but most recently, we did an operation. Some of y'all might have seen it on our Facebook page. Good. If you haven't followed our Facebook page, go follow it now. But we did a child sex predator sting. It lasted 3 days. Without going into too much detail, myself, all my coworkers, people from DPS, TABC, different agencies, we all got together, and I'll just tell you, I posed as a 15-year-old girl online. Within minutes of posting an ad or a profile, I had so many hits, I couldn't even keep up with them. And when I say hits, I had all these adult men wanting to talk to me. And it wasn't, hey, how you doing? It was pictures of penises. It was sexually explicit language, just that fast. Couldn't keep up with it. I had to just weed out everybody that wasn't in this area and focus on protecting, the citizens of Kerr County. We did make 5 arrests in that sting. And I know Chuck brought it up before. 2 of those people we arrested were meeting to have sex with an underage boy. Yeah, it's not just girls. That is something that it's just going to continue. We're not going to stop. We really want to put the message out there that if you come to Kerr County to victimize our children, we're coming after you. One of the other things that, and Carla just told me when she talked to me about this, just talk whatever comes to your heart. I think it's extremely important that we're monitoring what our children are doing on their, I didn't bring my phone up here, but on their phones, the computers, their online activity. And so I have there was supposed to be a thumb drive, and I think it got misplaced, and so it's not going to be up on the screen. But but anyways, I have some printed out stuff for y'all after we get done. But there are so many apps out there that it is hard to keep up with for a law enforcement officer that people are trying to victimize our children. So I know it's hard for y'all to keep up with as parents and grandparents. So what I've done is I've printed a list of these apps and sites out for you to look at. And you can take this home with you, take pictures of them, whatever, share them with your friends. But some of these apps on here is exactly what I was using in that child sex predator sting. So some are worse than others. I personally hate Snapchat. Another thing is we are working with Border Patrol, Operation Lone Star, HSI. The human smuggling has just increased. We're seeing it daily now, even here in Kerr County. I had 8 of them running in front of my house 2 months ago. But they're bringing over women, they're bringing over children, and those children get left behind. The children and the women are repeatedly raped all the way from wherever they're coming to until they get here. And we actually had a woman run out of the bushes screaming because she saw somebody and she was tired of being repeatedly raped day after day after day. And 8 people were just continuing to rape her. So we're working with them. It's not just smuggling. Smuggling includes trafficking. It's synonymous, okay? And I promised Carla I would say this too, that trafficking is here in Kerrville, Texas. Okay? I have a case I'm working on right now, and that's all I'm going to tell you about that, but right now. And unfortunately, it doesn't always go as fast as you would like it to, but we'll get there. So, in saying that, I wanted to share this with you. I worked a case, 11 months I worked on this case. Took a lot out of me. It was a little girl that was probably trafficked in her own home. Okay? It was her step-grandfather, her mother's boyfriend that we got rid of, and then another boyfriend came in, and then the same thing. It started over. I never could get to trafficking on it. I just couldn't prove it. But we did put 3 people in jail on that for continuous sexual abuse of a child under 14 years old. They're all awaiting trial. But she was, because of all that, I kind of threw a fit. I'm like, CPS, please help me. We got to get her out of there. All right. We got her out of there. She was put into placement. She was moved one placement to another, and then she ran away. And as soon as she ran away, my heart dropped because I knew what was going to happen. So I got a phone call, what was it? About a week ago, 2 a.m., that they found her with a 36-year-old man at 2 o'clock in the morning. And she's not ready to talk yet, apparently. She wouldn't talk to anybody. We're not giving up on that. We're still going to try to get that outcry. But that was right here in Kerr County. That's the point of that whole thing, right here. It's close to home. So, and she'll be back in our community at some point. She'll be back here. And I'm probably going to call you. Yeah. Another thing I want to just touch on just briefly is public involvement. I'm one person. There's 4 other investigators in my office and my captain sitting back there in the corner. There's 6 of us, and all these cases. The Kids Advocacy Place did 119 interviews for Kerr County cases for children that were sexually abused or accused of being sexually abused. They did 312 for everybody that they serve, all the counties that they serve. So you take 119 in Kerr County and divide that by 6, and that's just the children. I'm still working adult sexual assaults and adult human trafficking and things like that. It's hard for me to know everything. So, and if you know something is going on, you got to report it. I can't work on it if I don't know about it. I don't really, I stay stressed out. It's just the nature of the beast, but I'm not going to turn the case away. So you, as citizens, see this stuff going on, and I hear it all the time from a lot of people like, well, I didn't want to get involved. Get involved today. Get involved. Let's get these people out of Kerr County, locked up. I don't know what happened to that flash drive. Well, I don't really want it back. I just wanted them to have the information. What? Okay, well, there was a link that I wanted to give y'all. Yes. We can actually post it on our Facebook page. Okay. There's a link to a video on YouTube that I think every parent should have. And what that link is, it's a very short video, and it tells you for an Apple phone, an Android phone, whatever you have, how to go into that phone and look and see what apps have been on that phone since it was purchased. If it was deleted, you can still see it, so you know what your kids are looking at. Okay, and I really wish we had that. We can get the information out. Okay, I will email that to Carla, and she put it on the Mercy Gate Facebook page, and your website, or what? We can put it probably on the Facebook page. On the Facebook page? Okay, and please go and get that and look at that. So one of the things in my house for my children, if you have a phone, I will have the passcode to that phone. If it has biometrics, my thumbprint will be on that phone, my facial recognition will be on that phone, and you will give it to me anytime I ask you to inspect. If you're not doing that, you need to start, because you don't know what world your children are living in. You need to start. And they'll be weirded out at first. Who cares? I'd rather them be weirded out than be victims. So. Yes, ma'am. I don't know if I would try to slip them a card, because if they are, that's probably not safe for you. If they are being controlled by somebody, I think probably the best thing you can do is call 911. Yeah, don't do grimace. Call 911. We would rather check it out and it be nothing than just let it go. Don't do anything that would put yourself in danger. That would be the best thing I could tell you on that. But my card is at the back of the room on that table. Oh, you already got it? Okay. I don't really mind the phone calls. My email is on there. Try not to call me at 10 o'clock at night, but if you have to, you have to. At 2 a.m., yeah. So, another thing is our Crime Stoppers page. It kind of, Facebook shut us down a couple of times. And so we're going through some transitions on that, and we have a new Crime Stoppers page. It's Kerr County Crime Stoppers, Inc., all one word. Please go follow that too. I only have 50 people that have liked that page so far, and that's not good. We rely on y'all for a lot of information, for a lot of investigations. So the Facebook page and Crime Stoppers, please. Okay, I'm done. Oh, don't forget, these are at the back of the room.
Thank you, Greg. And thank you also for your service to our country. And I will say that he's been very active in attending local events, training, opportunities, and team collaborations. He's always present. And honestly, I can also say that we can all sleep a little bit better knowing that there's officers like him out there. So thank you. We do not have time for a panel today. If you have questions, you can email us at info@Mercygate Ministries, send us a message on Facebook, and we can try to answer those or get you to somebody who can. So it is our hope tonight that as a ministry and partnered agencies that we have gained awareness as a community tonight, and that you feel, you leave feeling equipped to see something and say something. We know that this is a heavy topic, but it's happening here. I think this might be dying. In order to take action, we have to talk about these hard topics. So it seems overwhelming and almost impossible, but we start somewhere, and this is a worldwide problem, but we can start in our community. And I'm just so grateful for the partners that we have who are making a difference in protecting our children, because it does start with one community at a time, and one life at a time. It changes generations. So don't be overwhelmed. You can always reach out to us. There's different ways to get involved, different partners. If it's not with Mercygate, we can get you connected with where you feel like your gifts are. So a couple next steps before you leave today. October 23rd, we have a Walk for Freedom with A21 Freedom Chasers. That's an outreach event. Location is pending. It will either be at the courthouse or Lewis Hayes Park, and we'll just do raising awareness and walking the downtown square. Also, our next community event for Hill Country Conversations, like the first one we had, will be quarterly. The next one is January 27th, and that topic is types of abuse. That will be held at Ingram High School. So we'll send out more information on that as well. So thank you again. I pray that you are blessed from here on out and get home safely.